I said it's really the best way to introduce young people to theater, to teach them how to be an audience in a place that they're not going to get totally scolded if they make noise and can't sit still. The shows are meant for them. They're short. And afterwards, they get to meet the actors and get autographs. And I really believe that it is the perfect way to introduce people to theater.
Welcome to Matador Memories. I'm your host, Annalisa Vanolia, here with my co-host, Carmen Ramos-Chandler. Today, we'll be talking about CSUN's Teenage Drama Workshop, or TADWA, which was established in 1957, a year before what was then San Fernando Valley State was founded. The program is now approaching its 67th year. We're here with Candy Sherwin, an incredible dance instructor who spent more than 40 years teaching at TADWA. Hi, Candy.
Hi, Annalisa. Hi, Carmen.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So, can you explain what TADWA is for those who don't know?
Yes. The Teenage Drama Workshop was created to introduce young artists to theater. And it's really a theater intensive. It is not camp by any means. And we invite kids from age 12 to 18 to spend 6 weeks of their summer. They take classes in dance, in acting, in voice, perhaps a musical theater class, an improv class. And they take classes during the day for 4 hours in the morning. And then there are productions that are directed by other faculty members that are rehearsed in the afternoon. So the students get a chance not only to learn and be students, but then also to perform.
Yes, as a student, I was a student for 4 years, and then I believe assisted at the workshop for 3 years. But the classes were a wonderful learning opportunity, but then you got to implement what you learned in the classes in those productions, so you could see your progress being made over the course of those 6 weeks, and that was really nice. Also, Candy taught me, and she was super cool and fun. So.
Well, there's that. Well, I will say about as far as the workshop in the earlier years, it was not called TADWA. That's something that kind of came about, I think maybe during the early 2000s. Maybe we called it workshop. And if you talk to any of the older students, they'll say, oh, yeah, when I was in workshop, which is kind of interesting. I had to train myself to call it TADWA because having been there as it was workshop.
Wow.
But the main thing that was really important about the creation of it is that the program was really about the classes. Being cast in a production was a bonus because early on, you were never guaranteed to be cast in a show.
Oh, really? Okay.
So when the classes were over at 12:30, half the students, maybe not half, would go home. And the rest would stay and would be cast in a show. So if you were cast in a show, you would stay later, or if you chose to be on the crew side, you would stay. But it was never a guarantee. Now, of course, at that time, things were a little bit different. There were not always working two parents, so that would make a difference. But it was always about the classes. And then over the years, things changed and everyone was kind of guaranteed a slot, if you will.
So when did you first get involved with TADWA?
I was a theater student. And
at CSUN.
At CSUN. I was in the theater department, and I was fortunate enough my very first year to be cast in a musical that was directed by Dr. Schlosser and choreographed by Marianne Clemens. And these are two faculty members that were extremely important facilitating the growth and the progress of Teenage Drama Workshop. And I was invited early on as a student to come in and be a faculty member and teach and choreograph.
Must have been very impressive.
I was very lucky, I feel.
What made the workshop stand out to me as a parent was the caliber of the faculty. Because when one thinks about workshops, you think of Andy Rooney and Judy Garland, and you're doing it all yourself, but you actually had university faculty and professionals teaching.
Exactly. Early on, when I first started, I was a student and there were other faculty members that were students, but we were definitely mentored by university people, including Mary Ellen Clemens, Sarah Jane Evans, were some of the ones that were there for me were my faculty while I was a student here, and then professionals. And then throughout the years, less and less did we have instructors that were students. They would be maybe assistants, because I know how many I actually kind of trained, if you will, that assisted me a couple summers and then would move in and then be teachers or choreographers or, whatever their line was. But yeah, it really was an amazing, amazing group of instructors every year.
Yeah, I think just another link to CSUN, Diane Ketchy, who was a voice teacher while I was at Tadwa, she was also a CSUN professor.
Musical theater.
Yeah, who has had some impressive work in her musical theater career.
Absolutely.
And that was nice, because we had access to, obviously, what was comfortable for her is her classroom, and she... If things like in the classroom, which I believe was the organ room in Nordhoff Hall, were a little iffy or whatever, she knew exactly who to contact to get things right, just because it was her building. She was like, I know exactly what to do. It was
That's
just like
a bonus.
Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so do you remember some of the early productions that you were involved with? It doesn't have to be your first one, but some of the early productions that you were involved with
I have
Padua.
choreographed so many shows over the years. I think early on. Again, things have changed a lot over the years. Early on, we had anywhere between 5 and 7 groups of students.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
We had approximately 150 kids in the workshop. At one point, we had over 170. There were 2 years that I actually led the workshop, co-led it with Mia. And at that point, we had 7 groups. We were all over. And we did 4 shows.
Whoa.
We did 4. Now, they were smaller shows. So what would happen is we started with a show in the Little Theater, which is camp number 121. At the time, they had room numbers, right? The Little Theater. And then the next show would open up in the Studio Theater, which is no longer there. They turned it into a classroom. And then the show that was in the Little Theater would close, and another one would go in there. And then the final weekend, just for one weekend, would be a big show in the campus theater.
Yeah.
And we did 4. So it was really an amazing experience for these kids to see how quickly we got up these shows. And I remember that one of the first shows I did, it'll be a title you guys will go like, what? Was Sing Ho for a Prince.
Okay.
And I remember it because it was one of the first ones. It was in the campus theater, and the late Ray Cavallari was the director. Yeah. Ray was the first director that I worked with here, and I loved him, and he passed away a couple years ago. I also remember early on doing a production of Red Shoes, and we did that in the Little Theater with Marilyn Weitz as the director. Yeah.
Wow.
I just recently got back in touch with Marilyn. She's in her early 90s, and we were talking on the phone about 6 months ago. Those were a couple of the really early shows that I can remember. So many that we did. And one of my very favorites was called Celebrate the Sky, which was an original that was written by Mia Fazio. And that was a great show. That was also directed by Marilyn.
Would it be was it possible for students to be cast in more than one production?
As I remember, I don't think that happened very often. We didn't cast them because there were so many students. Mm-hmm. But what could happen is if you were in the first show that opened up in the Little Theater, you could crew the big show.
Wow.
So that was a really neat experience. So if you had someone who really wanted to do it all, that's what they could do. So the first show, I believed, opened the third weekend. Mm-hmm. You had like 10 days to get it up. And then that would run a couple weeks. And then the last weekend would be the last show. So they would jump into the other show and do the tech work and learn how to run it.
This is like summer stock.
It was exactly like summer stock. It was seriously one of the most amazing experiences for these young people. It still is. but it was a very different program when it first started.
Was it all musical theater? Or were there some?
No, everything. Play, because you couldn't do that. You just didn't have the time, and that's another thing that I really liked about it is it was not a musical theater workshop. It's a theater workshop because there are plenty of amazing young performers or just kids that just want to be on stage and don't stick with it. This is not something that they have to make a life choice on, but that they don't sing and don't want to sing, but they're so talented. So we absolutely did not do all musicals ever.
We talk a little bit about the impact it has on participants, but what's it like for the audience is the 7-year-olds and the 8-year-olds, and what does TADWA bring to an audience, not just to the young people involved, but also to those who get to see it?
Oh, I think what I would always tell friends of mine who had children and wanted to bring the show, I would try to get them to come and see our shows. I said it's really the best way to introduce young people to theater, to teach them how to be an audience in a place that they're not going to get totally scolded if they make noise and can't sit still. The shows are meant for them. They're short. And afterwards, they get to meet the actors and get autographs. And I really believe that it is the perfect way to introduce people to theater and hopefully create theater lovers for the rest of their lives and to appreciate the arts. And they may be watching and be that child that's not so much focused on the performers, but might be fascinated by the lights or the sets and go, how do they do that? I want to do that. Someone who's creative in a different way. So I believe that that's the best thing that Teenage Drama Workshop can bring to the community. I still do.
Now I'm going to take the other role. Both you and I had children in Teenage Drama Workshop. None of them went into theater or the entertainment industry. I still think to this day it's one of the best things I ever did for my kids. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I had the time of my life at TADWA. So.
But what do they get out of it from that end?
I'll get all emotional talking about my kid. Yeah, my son Colin spent all of his life before he went away to college at TADWA. I was teaching when I was pregnant with him. I was teaching when he was 7 months old. He grew up there. I had a pack and play in the other room where he could sit and play. I had brought a friend of mine, a former TADWA student. I hired her for those couple hours. She would come and babysit him when I couldn't be right with him. And he grew up there. Then he went into, when he was old enough, he became a participant in the program, like Annalisa. You guys were there at the same time.
Yeah, Susical.
Yeah. And I gave him the choice and tried to nudge him several times when he was a little bit later in high school to do something else, to go. Some of his friends went away to a certain summer camp every year. I said, you can go. We'll send you. I don't want to. I want to be, I don't want to miss TADWA. He didn't want to miss it, yet he'd been there every summer. The community that is there amongst the kids, a couple of his very closest friends are still his closest friends that are from TADWA. I didn't say that very well, but I think you know what I meant. And yes, he chose not to go into theater, but he did the performance track, and then he went into technical. He wanted to do lighting, and that he was fascinated by that and did that his last couple of years. And it was actually one of his mentors at CSUN when he was thinking about, he was going to study engineering in college. And he said, maybe I want to do theater. Maybe I want to do scenic design and technical theater. And I was very grateful when Matt and Glenn both told him, no, do your engineering. That was still, if you still have the love for theater, it'll still be there, and you can use your engineering, your mechanical engineering towards that. But don't study that. You can do that later. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful. And to this day, Colin is still a theater lover. And he loves dance. He went to see recently Matthew Bourne's ballet.
Oh, we tried to do that. Yeah.
He goes to everything. So he's still a theater lover. And I appreciate that.
I definitely, speaking to the relationships and the community that Tadwa creates, I think it creates a really special, it's just a bond with people that you might not have met from across LA otherwise, that is enduring. And I, in college when I studied in Portland, but I would come home whenever I would like drive by Nordhoff Hall, I'd take a picture on Snapchat. And send it to all of my friends from Tadwa and be like, oh my God, it's Nordhoff Hall, and we would all be like, oh my God, we miss Tadwa. And I'm still friends with these people, like we still catch up from time to time. And yeah, just as someone who went through the program, not only did Tadwa increase my appreciation for theater, which thanks to my parents, I did love theater prior to joining Tadwa, but it certainly gave me a stronger appreciation for what it takes to put on a production.
Yeah.
But the things oddly enough, Tadwa helped me in my English courses. I'm not even joking. Like,
Okay.
Chris Halstead, who taught the acting class, shout out to Chris, his acting class, actually, some of the things he taught us about meter, I was able to use in my English class and
awesome.
ace tests.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So like community, just like a theater appreciation, and then also a little bit of like English help as well, which was nice.
Well, I think that the community aspect is really, really important for so many students that come into CSUN, to the program, I should say, at Teenage Drama Workshop. They will tell you, I found my people. I'm not accepted anywhere else. Here I can do what I can be who I want to be, and I'm accepted. And I have heard that every summer from multiple students over 40 years. And that feeling of acceptance, that when you come, you may come from your theater program where you're the star, where your director at your high school goes, okay, I've got Annalisa this year. I got to pick something for Annalisa. That's not the case. We've got new students every summer. You're all in the same pool. You're all equal. There aren't any stars. And that is really apparent when new kids come in. And I think it's so, so important. It gives them a safe space to be every summer. And I am still in touch with, I can't tell you how many students of mine that from 35, 40 years ago that I still talk to through Facebook, and I'll get message that'll say, oh my gosh, I just heard a song that we use. We're back on your elbows.
No, stop. There's this one song that KCSN plays that every time I hear it, I'm like, Lindsay used to play this for pliés. It's time to do a plié. My body has an automatic response.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
Yeah, I hear you.
oh my goodness, yeah.
What are some of your favorite workshop traditions?
There are so many of them. I love the invitationals, which is the final dress rehearsal for a show the night before it's going to open. And it would be opened up to former students, alumni of any time. Your parents couldn't come unless your parents were an alum, which has been happening. I've been teaching children of my former students. And how is that possible? I'm not old enough. And that's a wonderful night, so that the kids backstage, and Annalisa, I'm sure you can speak to this, they get very excited about performing not only for the students from that summer that are in the other show and might not get the opportunity to see it because they're going to be having their own performance. So the other kids from the program come, but the alumni come, and everybody gets dressed up and they're all excited. It's like they're going to prom, and then they go out to eat afterwards. And I just think that's a beautiful tradition. I love the Munch and Crunch, which is the final, when the workshop's all over, there are many performances from the classes and a big performance from the musical theater class, which I'm a little partial to, and then a picnic and awards. And it's a day that everybody cries when it's over, and everybody's hugging. Everybody's sad because it's over.
And then there's a pool party afterwards.
And there's a pool party afterwards, exactly. And it's just I love that. There's so many. There's so many, but that's when you have a program this old. Traditions, I really believe, are so important. They keep it going, and they keep people that have been a part of it in the past wanting to be a part of it in the present, I think.
Are there traditions that the students themselves create and hand down?
Yeah. So
Horace Hall? Are we going to Horace Hall?
Horace Hall was a really fun tradition where the older students in the workshop would put on a sort of haunted house for the younger students. We would do this in the dressing rooms in the basement of Nordhoff Hall. When I was a young student, it was quite exciting to have an alum come speak to us to tell us the story of Horace. So Cecil was putting on a production of Hamlet, and Horace really wanted to play Hamlet. It was his dream role. Basically been preparing, did his best at the audition. Unfortunately, however, Horace was not cast as Hamlet. And Horace wasn't able to handle this, so he did take his own life on the main stage for the campus theater, and then proceeded to haunt the dressing rooms.
Yeah.
And
so I've heard.
Yeah.
So I've heard.
Horace did, and when I was a kid, Horace absolutely haunted those dressing rooms. We were taken down, doors were banging, there was blood on the walls, the lights were flickering. Oh my God. We would all rush out screaming, sorry to the office workers. Yeah. But it was so fun. Then as an older student, I got to participate in putting on Horace Hall. And so that was a fun tradition. Also knowing eventually that once you had participated in the program long enough, you then would be able to do that for the newer students.
Right.
And that was absolutely lovely. Oh, and then the production, the sketch during Munch and Crunch.
I was just going to tell you about that.
Yeah.
That the sketch during Munch and Crunch, that is also got swapped. Traditionally, way back when, it was the faculty who did it. We did it.
Yeah.
And so we would get up, and that's after Munch and Crunch, the faculty would put on a little show because one of the years, believe it or not, some of us did Cell Block Tango from Chicago.
Wow.
Somewhere I've got a video of me doing Cell Block Tango. Yeah. Now, granted, it was a little tamer, but we did it. We did it.
A little light on the choreography.
Right, exactly. And I don't know when that all started to change, but it changed, and then it became something that the kids did, where you guys would write a script that would be a little takeoff and on what everything happened that summer, changing the characters' names, paying tribute to your faculty.
Gentle spoofing.
Yes, gentle spoofing. But that was relatively new also.
Let's explain for those not to know. This was a satire, a satirical take of the summer with the students emphasizing various incidents. That
older students in the program would do that. Yeah, it was.
It became, though, to a point, they got, in my opinion, some of them got a little long, and some of the jokes became too inside. And so that's where we tried to shorten them a little bit, encourage the student writers to keep everything a little more inclusive, because you had family members at Munch and Crunch and friends who would be sitting there going, huh? But it really was a fun tradition. And as you became an older student in the program, when you were asked to be a part of it, that was kind of a big deal too, as I remember.
It was a fun time.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you.
Okay.
You spent more than 40 years working with hormonal teenagers.
Yeah.
How did you survive?
You know what? I think maybe I got better at it every year. I've always been, I feel, a people person and fairly compassionate. And I've always wanted to teach. I started teaching dance at Parks and Recs when I was 16 years old. I looked older, but so I think that feeling of always wanting to teach, and I always liked kids. I babysat all the time, when I was I loved to babysit. And so I think it was just something, I don't know. It's just part of my nature. How lovely and fortunate am I to be able to share my passion, and dance and theater is my passion, to be able to teach it, and to have all these young artists, young people, sponges. And there were definitely times where those hormones, we like to call it definitely the teenage drama workshop, because there was always that. But for me, it was part of it, and it's part of what I loved about it. And I do know that there were many, many times where kids in the program would come to me and feel comfortable enough with me to be able to say, I'm having a hard time with this, or what do I do? Or I used to have an office in there a long time ago, and I would often have kids in there, and that felt good. And I think it made me a better teacher and just a better human to be able to understand what these hormonal young people were going through.
I'd like to think that we weren't always horrific.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not. Otherwise, I would have been, I'd have been gone. I'd have been gone.
What are some of your favorite stories during your time as an instructor?
Teaching the musical theater class was a huge gift and a lot of work. And starting that every summer when we do that first week, and we would give the students in that class what our theme was going to be. And they'd be picking songs in a genre that we would give them, and they would have to bring them to us, and then we would create a show out of it. And watching some of these students that were just shy and quiet and wanted to be in that class come and grow and get in the production numbers and do a solo or a duet, those moments for me as a teacher were everything. And just to watch that. One of my favorite moments was when we did Hamilton. And we did not the whole thing, but we did a little 10-minute piece of Hamilton. And Will Riddle, shout out to Will. Will was he doing Thomas Jefferson, or Colin was doing Thomas? I don't know. One of them.
Oh, I remember
he was doing Hamilton, and he lost his voice, and he barely had anything. And just kind of watching as we came up to that, how he was going to do it and mouthing it, and the way everybody in the class, in the production, worked, holding him up and encouraging him, because he was doing the Hamilton. He had the main part in this, and he had no voice. And just he got words out, but getting there, it was that community again. That's one of my favorite summers. It was really fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Just also as a mom, it must have been really special to see Colin during his first production for Seussical playing little JoJo.
Oh my God, he was 11. He got to start a little early.
Yeah.
So he was just this little tiny person, and that show starts with JoJo, though we did it in the house, in the audience, walking down in the campus theater and looking on the stage and going, now that's a big hat. And every dang performance, I'd sit out there and go, where did he get the courage to do that? He just walked down there, do that, and climb up on stage. And yeah, it was pretty special. That I definitely have to say one of the biggest highlights of Tadwell is that I got to spend, I'm gonna cry, every summer with my kid. You know, he wasn't in my class until later he was in musical theater with me, but he wasn't in my dance class or acting class or anything like that. But I knew where he was every summer, and I got to see the amazing friends that he made. So I was pretty lucky.
Yeah. So as someone who was in a couple of the musicals that you choreographed, there is a very famous move that anyone who's learned dance from you probably knows, which is the candy drape. For our listeners who aren't watching on YouTube, you take your arm and you drape it over your head and have your hand hanging over the top, on the side of your head. YouTube, that's for you. So can you tell us the history of the candy drape?
It's so long ago what I remember is it was a goofy thing, clearly, and it wasn't something that was planned to become a tradition. There was a time when I was choreographing or directing, and I'd be standing on the side and I'd be thinking, and for some reason I would take my arm and drape it over my head and do one of those little, what's that going to be? And somewhere someone kind of made fun of me, mocked me a little bit and did that. And I remember then I thought, I'm just going to throw it in the show. And somehow, I wish I could remember, but it's so many years, it became a tradition that every show I choreographed, the drape had to appear. And sometimes it would appear really small. It might be, I think somewhere when we did Annie, it was somebody who just walked by and was like leaning on a post and for a brief moment put their arm over their head. Or it could be something really big in a number where you would notice it where it went with the choreography, and I would put it in there. It was really hard to find a place for the drape in Fiddler on the Roof, let me tell you. And it ended up being the bottle dancer who got to I threw it over on a bottle dance for a second. That arm went over there, but it was brief. But it just became a tradition. I also threw it in musical theater, and it was something that for years alumni would look for it. Yeah, if they came on to the invitational to my show, and when it appeared, it would get this random applause. Or if someone was in the audience and saw it during one of my shows, and you would hear a random, that was just somebody who saw the drape. And so kind of cool. It became a really cool thing for me that everyone waited for it. And it was just a silly little thing, but it was like it was an inside joke. And that's, I think, why it became a fun thing, is that if you became in the program, or maybe you were a parent or someone in the program, you got to be in on a silly little inside joke, and that was the drape.
A little Easter egg also, as a student, if you got to do the drape, it was really fun. You felt special.
We call it the gift of drape. You don't get to do it unless you get the gift of drape.
I do remember as a parent sitting in an audience, because as a parent, if a TAD went in, you went to more than one production.
You did.
More than one show.
Absolutely.
Particularly if you invited family or friends to go. So you may have gone to every show in the run, or you may have been to most of them.
Right.
And then the drape would have, and there'd be parents or alum in the audience or other students, and there'd be a quick cheer as soon as they saw the drape. And people were looking like, what's going on? I'll tell you afterwards.
Yeah, that's funny. That's so silly.
Okay, and then just got to touch on some notable alumni from the program. I'm sure that for one, at least who I knew, Julia Lester, who was on Broadway with Into the Woods. Chadwell has generated some pretty impressive alumni. Are there any that you can remember who stood out to you?
There are Stephen Kaplan, who lives in New York, and I still talk to regularly. He is a writer and has had many shows of his produced. In fact, he had one that was yesterday that he had streamed with another former Tadwa, Farah Alvin, who is also a working singer and performer, and she directed this production. Before my time, Mayor Winningham was in the program. But certainly Julia. Oh, also Sabrina Carpenter.
Yes, I was there. I think she was in Music Man.
Yes, she was there for a minute.
Yeah.
And she was gone, but she was there, and she was the mayor's daughter in Music Man.
And I remember one of her older sisters was in tech, and then the other was also in the musical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's certainly been one of the absolute most important things that I've ever done in my life. Next to getting married and having my child, seriously, it's right there. I mean, I've spent most of my living years there, because I started as a student, obviously, and I cannot imagine not having those summers in that building, and just with the smelly little teenagers running around. I just loved it so much, and it's really pretty amazing when someone does reach out to me out of nowhere and says, "You did this. Thank you for this." And those little moments, man, my heart just swells.
Curious, as a freshman at CSUN, did you envision that you'd end up spending 40 years on the campus, but in a capacity where you went from a student to faculty almost immediately?
Hell no. I didn't know what I was doing. No, because actually when I came here, I mean, I had been dancing my whole life. I did theater in school, all that stuff. And I came here as a psychology major and a theater minor. And I only did that because you don't major in theater, you don't major in theater. And I remember after my first, I don't know if it was my first semester or my first year, how those weird things that you remember? I have a visual. I'm at home. My mom was sitting at the table. I opened the refrigerator door, like just to be casual, and she's behind me. And I kind of said, yeah, so I'm going to be a theater major. And I remember I said it into the refrigerator. And my mom's response is, what does it mean to be a drama major? She said, drama. Love that. And it's where I needed to be because I knew I wanted to be a performer or a director or a choreographer. I just knew I needed to be in the arts. But knowing that I would really find my place here and it would be CSUN would be so instrumental in my life, I didn't know that. But boy, one summer spent in this program, I knew that I'd found it. I knew it. There was never a doubt in my mind. I never even thought about where will I be next summer. I needed to always be here. Yeah, it's the truth.
I think of a couple of students who went through the program who I know, one of whom is related to me, and not this one, who are incredibly shy. But as they went through high school and college, had no problem, knew how to take a breath and take on that Tadwa persona to present, to teach, to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous to experience and to see. It's just,
Shouts, so valuable.
Yeah.
And just to wrap us up here,
Okay.
Are there any last memories, any last things you want people to know about Tadwa? Just, if there's nothing, that's okay, but...
I'll give a shout out to Mary Ellen Clemens, who has passed away a few years back. She was my mentor, and she was a faculty member at CSUN, and as I think I mentioned, she's the one who hired me, and then I stayed there because of her. And the reason I give a shout out is that I was fortunate enough to have someone who recognized something in me and brought me into this program. And I would hope for everyone that they're fortunate enough in their lives to put themselves out there, and to have someone to see that in them and to mentor them, or for you to be the mentor when you are in a position that you see something in someone that they may not even see in themselves, to reach out, be that mentor, because you just don't know where that's going to take someone. And what a lovely gift. There were so many fabulous people that I've met in this program. I hope that it continues for many, many years. It will continue to evolve. It will continue to have changes. Some of them might be great. Some of them might not be as great, but they're necessary for the times. And I'm just so grateful to have Teenage Drama Workshop, Tadwa Workshop, whatever you want to call it, and Cal State Northridge in my life. It's been an amazing, amazing blessing, and I'm so grateful for you all for wanting to share some of the program with people that just don't even know that it's here. So thank you for that.
Thank you for joining us for Matador Memories. You can find us at the CSUN Conversations website,
Or Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or one of your favorite podcast listening platforms.
including YouTube.